Brown says, get that India. Big boy.
Call an ambulance! Maybe call a police! Oh, what a shot! What a shot! Campbell killer!
Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host, John, also known as 4020. Joining me to preview another 5-game docket for our mighty Parramatta Eels is my good mate, Sixties big fella. Round 24 for the boys. And then we've got obviously the split rounds between the NRLW and the Harvey Norman's Women's Premiership. Round 4 for the top flight there, and then round 7 for the Harvey Norman Women's Premiership. So much football to talk about, and we've unburdened ourselves of all the controversy, all the dramatic no calls and bogus rhetoric used to defend them. So now we can just talk football in a clean and positive environment. You ready to look at what's happening for the Eels this weekend, mate?
No, I'm still human.
Yeah.
No, I still haven't moved past last week, mate. The explanation from Annesley.
Oh, asinine, mate. Asinine.
I mean, I'm beyond words with that. It's like, so now...
And the best part is the next time it happens against one of the big clubs, you know that it's going to be reversed and they'll be using different rhetoric to defend it, saying, this is what it's meant to be, is that as a clear obstruction that, the Roosters or the Storm or the Panthers were impeded here, and that's always going to be a no try. And they're like, excuse me?
Yeah. And look, the thing is, the Eels as a team, and I know this to be true, all right, they're not going to be looking at that when they're doing their review. They're looking at what they did wrong in that last 8 minutes. That's been where, what their direction has been. However, as supporters, we can fire up. We can talk about how disgraceful the decision was and a few other things that are, people might hear about. There's been a bit of whisper about the some interesting HIA replacements and things like that that took place in the NRL over the weekend. I won't say anything more there. But look, as far as the football's concerned, the Eels can't worry themselves about that because they're the sorts of things, calls like that, calls like the offside from the kick, they're completely out of the Eels' control. What was in the Eels' control, as we talked about, and people who didn't hear our instant reaction would know that we still talked about where the Eels had to look in the mirror, which was just that poor game management in that set where they had the penalty on the Panthers line. They went for an early kick rather than just working to turn the ball over in the corner. Chase was poor. Within that set, the Panthers are getting a penalty and they're streaming away for the try to get them back into the contest. We don't do that. It's likely that it's a whole different scenario. And the problem with us for this season has been, John, that we can look at these narrow losses and literally in every one of them go, what on earth did we do there? What did we do there? What did we do there? They're like a collection of bad moments, losing moments in the game, which ultimately become costly. And, even allowing for the atrocious officiating, the Eels still have to look in the mirror for that moment. And I guess now, as we talk about this week, they have to really regather their enthusiasm, their effort, their willingness to compete after a match where they would have been terribly down in the sheds afterwards. So can they get themselves back into that competitive state of mind against the Roosters? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about in this podcast, mate.
Yeah, obviously those 5 games to preview and the boys taking on the Roosters in the NRL in that Friday primetime slot, backing up just 7 days from the same slot against Penrith. But before we do talk football, as always, a quick shout out to the sponsors of the Tip Sheet, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Rowan and Parramatta. Love everything that Greg and the crew do to support us and rugby league for Parramatta in general. So fantastic partners of the show. We always give them a massive shout out for good reason. So much love to Greg and the crew there. All right, mate, let's get into these previews. Obviously, we've got the high-end stuff at the back slot, of the podcast in the NRL and NRLW. Eels taking on the Roosters in the men. Eels taking on the Tigers in the ladies. But let's start with the Jersey Flegg in that first slot. And the Eels looking to push for what is still an unlikely final slot, but geez, they're playing some good football as they look to make amends for that slow start to the year. They've got the Newcastle Knights coming into Eric Tweedale this week. Saturday, 3 o'clock p.m. kickoff. It is a doubleheader out that way with the New South Wales Cup. Eels taking on the Knights in both grades there. There's a bit of asynchronicity coming in for the draws there between first grade and then the reserve grade and Flegg. Eels and Knights met earlier this season, 60s, and it was one of the, in this big run that the Eels have had, it was one of the few losses, not only one of the few losses they had, but perhaps the only comprehensive loss they'd had, 34-18 at McDonald Jones, round 17, whereas every other loss I think has been by single digits maybe. They've been very good in this entire run since that slow start. But yeah, the Knights were too good in that day. I think it was any particular individual there? No, it was a comprehensive team effort, looks like, at the scoreboard there. But Eels coming into this one for a win against Penrith with one change in the back line. Michael Abdo coming in for Devonta Vivella, who we believe injured his knee, which means that the rest of the team is the same. Twiddle at fullback, Alan Medina, McCarthy on the wings, the aforementioned Abdo on the centres alongside Araz Nanva, Matty Hunter and Josh Lynn halves, Tuavati and Brown props to Riley Smith for dummy half, Brazel, Dom Destratus and Pryke in the back row, then Tupo, Lakini, Nemia, and then Raf Destratus on the interchange. It is a very good squad. There is a number of guys that aren't playing this week that could have legitimately had places in this team. That's how well the team has been travelling. But taking on the third place Newcastle Knights, going to be a tough one. But we said it last week when they took on the then third place Penrith Panthers. Eels have to have this one, and they've got the team to do it.
Yeah, look, the last time that they played the Knights was the week after that loss to the Raiders that they basically had bottled up, the top place Raiders. And my understanding is that there was a real mental down in that week. They just didn't get themselves back up for the contest. A lot of errors. It was probably in the run of matches since round 8 onwards, it was probably their most disappointing performance that they had. They recognise that themselves, and it's not too far down the track that they've got this opportunity for redemption. We said last week that it was potentially a season-defining match. Also said that in reality, probably every game was going to be season-defining as they battle to stay in the run for finals football. This one really, really is crucial because they can't afford to fall off the pace. They're still just behind the top 6. If they can get this game, win the other games that are remaining, I think it just about takes care of itself due to the draw and who plays who and who playing from then on. So I think if they get this, they can probably get close to having the destiny in their own hands. Let's see how they go. I think, last week was a great physical battle out there. And one of those players that really rose to the occasion is Max Tupou. Like, he had an enormous game off the bench last week. And, if he's in that sort of mood again this week, the Knights are in trouble. And that's not taken away at all from the rest of the pack, because we said at the start of the year, 40, that this team had a very good pack.
Yes, it definitely jumped out on paper, and then obviously they jump out. I say jump. They flop out to an 0-7 start with a number of games that they should have won, with the benefit, not even the benefit of hindsight. And then now, at that time, we were saying that they squandered games against the Tigers, and there was, I think, a game against Canberra, which we didn't realise at the time how important that would have been. But a couple of games there which they obviously bottled, but they were 0-7, and what a hole to be in to then make a 11-3 run to be the form team of the competition from that point. Like I said, that forward pack really is a strength on paper, and now we're seeing on the field it's starting to be fully realised to the point where like I said before, there are guys on the outside looking in this week. Will Lewis playing New South Wales Cup, Josiah Funayuta, who I'm not sure if he's injured since I haven't seen him anywhere in the last week or two, but a couple other guys there as well that could easily be playing on the interchange or if not starting for this team, and you wouldn't bat an eye.
Yeah, absolutely. So big turnaround in that, in what is it now, 11 of the last 14 games that they've been victorious in.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you look at the back line at the start of the season, there are some significant differences. Certainly both the wingers have come up from SG Ball and done an outstanding job at the moment in Mohamed Al-Madine and Ollie McCarthy.
And we always thought that Al-Madine was going to come in and do a great job for the Eels, but we saw McCarthy come into SG Ball as he wasn't in the pathways in the Harold Mats. He was I don't know whereabouts they got him, but he was a recruit in the season. And he came in at fullback for the SG Ball, and he's made a fantastic transition to the wing, hasn't he?
He's turning half chances into tries literally every time he's presented with them, and proving himself to be quite a classy finisher. So, you know, those wing positions are so important when you think about the work that's done coming out of, you know, in yardage from with kick returns. And it's just, if you've got the blokes that first of all can do that, and secondly are good finishers, and the Eels have that in both Moe and Ollie, you know, you're going a long way towards it, but towards wins. But again, I come back to the fact that, you know, the pack always looked like a strong pack. They're in good form. The team looks a lot better balanced now at this time of the season than they did earlier in the season. The coaches have done a great job, Jordan Rankin, Steve O'Day, and you can see the bonds that are there within the team. And it was, as I said in other podcasts, it's reminiscent last year of the bonds that were there in the SG Ball into the Flegg, and it's a similar sort of thing that's happened this year. So I'm going to tip them to get the job done this week against the Knights, because I've just seen them do too many good things in this run, and I've seen the self-belief grow. And, you know, when they're on song, they are a very difficult team to handle. And not only that, the work that they do in defence has been that's been a striking improvement throughout the season. So I'll tip them to get a victory somewhere between a 6 and 12 point margin against the Knights, and that's not with disrespecting the Knights, but I think the Eels are going to continue their role.
Yeah, I mean, we just mentioned the scoreline between these two teams. They met prior in round 17 this year. Newcastle acquitted themselves very well against Parramatta. Going to be very interesting to see how the Eels can handle this return fixture now. I am going to back a win. I think it's going to be pretty tight. But in saying that, I thought it'd be tight against Penrith last week, and they comfortably accounted for the Panthers. So maybe we'll be in the vicinity of 12 to 18 points.
Yep.
All right.
Well, let's just have faith. We're going to have faith. We're going to believe in them to get there for finals football, and have them and both the NRLW team at least in finals football.
Flying the flag for us. Yeah, exactly. All right, so that takes us to the next game on the docket, which is the Harvey Norman New South Wales Women's Premiership. That's a big mouthful there. Eels taking on the West Tigers in that very awkward slot. Monday, 7 o'clock p.m, New South Wales Rugby League Centre of Excellence. This is being live streamed on New South Wales Rugby League TV, so you can catch it online. But yeah, Monday Night Football twice for the Eels. That is a very awkward slot. I imagine it'd be pretty difficult for some of these girls juggling other commitments in their lives and getting out to a Monday night game. Anyway, Eels look like this. Yasmin Baker at fullback, Dwahi and Shipton on the wings, Kate Fallon and Aliyah Hamono in the centres, Bahuka Berryman Duff made her return last week, now gets the proper number 6 on her back at 5'8". She partners Talara Bamblett in the halves. Then you've got Aliti Namose, Tafawa Asua as the two props, Chelsea Makira dummy half. Back row is Senford and Captain Maiva on the edges, Rivali Arlaw lock forward. Then you've got Pottinger, Cedar Payne, Dimmick and Dimmick, so Sarah and Liana. Sarah obviously the half and Liana the prop forward there. And then we've got Pearden, Valuanga, Perigo, Bell and Farmasuli on the extended roster there. Taking on the Tigers, anyone we recognise here, 60s? Have a quick glance through. No one. Chelsea Seville. Anyone else there? Not really. So, not a deep West Tigers team in terms of NRLW fringe players there, at least based on past exposure. But the Eels are in desperate need of a win in this competition. 60s, we've banged on about their inefficiencies with the ball in hand and the awkward opportunities that they're sort of putting themselves into and gifting the ball to the opposition. They can't afford to do it for another week running because we know it's true of pretty much every grade that when you cough the ball up the way that this team has and the way that we've seen some other Eels team do so in different grades, it just makes it so hard to win.
Yeah, absolutely. They've been their own worst enemy this year, John. The completion rates are generally around the 60% mark on a weekly basis. Their season high is 70%. They've dropped down into the 50s. You cannot do that in matches and expect to be competing. Now, this week they're playing against a Tigers team that hasn't won a game. So, on paper, on the ladder, you say that the Eels get this one. And I'd like to think that they do get that. But it's time for them to start getting those errors under control. Without doing that, they're not going to realise the potential of the players that are in the team, because there are players with great potential that are in this team, and their football can vary from being executing great sets, like a coach couldn't hope for them to execute better in some of the sets that they put together. And then it's like they'll have a set where, I don't know, there's an awkward pass that might follow or play the ball, and then all of a sudden it's contagious in that same passage of play, and then invariably you'll get an error that happens. As I said, it's almost like it becomes contagious, and it's hard to rationalise how some of the precise play can then flip in the same game to play that looks like there isn't any confidence in what they're doing. So they go from like super confident, really pushing the opponents in with their attack, and then out comes a really simple error. So it'd be frustrating for the coaches, and they've done such a good job with these players. It's just a matter now of the players getting, sometimes, John, it's a matter of, if you get a bad pass and you get it under control, just tuck the ball under your arm and take the tackle.
Yes,
let the team settle down. And it seems like, although that message is out there and it's very clear for the players about what their roles are, there's just times, I think, where they get ahead of themselves or think that it's going to take something extra to fix an error that's just happened. Whereas the best way to fix an error is just settle it down.
Yeah.
Just settle it down. So
knowing
anyway,
when not to pull the trigger, both equally important. And like you said, sometimes there's almost a frenzied over eagerness to get to where they're meant to be in a set piece or a backline move, instead of just, like you said, taking the tackle and then just resetting for the next play.
Yep. So look, this this is potentially a game where they can have a good win. They can't get them. They certainly can't get ahead of themselves. They can't take anything for granted in coming up against a side that hasn't won a game this season, because the moment that you do that, you become the first win of the season for a team. But I believe that they can get the victory. I believe as well that this gives them the opportunity to regain some confidence there that might be dropping just a little bit. What we do know about the Eels players in the female pathways is that they do maintain a very positive disposition. I mean, we saw that in the Tasha Gale teams, where a lot of these girls have graduated from, where even when things aren't going as well as they would like them to be, they've just stayed positive in their application to the job. And even if there were errors there, it didn't stop them enjoying their football and putting their best foot forward. So I think we're going to see them enjoy a win this week. I'll tip a win in the 12 to 18 point margin bracket there. And I'm going to be expecting a big performance from the big prop, Asua.
Yeah, Tafo Asua, who's been a real wrecking ball near the goal line.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm expecting a big game from her. And I think Berryman Duff, second week back, we might just see her creating a little bit of havoc out there as well. So, yeah. And any tip from you, mate?
Look, they're taking on the last placed West Tigers, who I believe are winless in this grade. So you got to hope that our girls can get the job done here. And as we said, it's not a matter of talent. They've got plenty of talent in this roster. It's just a matter of stopping the sort of self-inflicted wounds and stop stop hurting themselves. Let's just not try and pronounce it if I'm going to keep tripping over it. So, yeah, just lock it in. Maybe, like you said, don't force the pass. Take a breath when you're under duress. Take the tackle. And I think that you just take care of business. You'll put yourself in a position to succeed and maybe rack up a pretty healthy scoreline here.
Yeah, absolutely. So that now brings us to the New South Wales Cup match.
Yeah, so New South Wales Cup coming off the back of a 22-all draw against the Penrith Panthers, now face the Newcastle Knights. And if I just pull up my ladder here very quickly, Newcastle come into this round in 8th position, just a couple of spots ahead of Parramatta. Although the Eels have 9.5 wins to Newcastle's 9 wins, so it must be a buy in there. Yeah, there's a buy in there being the difference. So the Eels actually half a win ahead against Newcastle right now, although their for and against is about 40 points worse, but they're on odd points, so it doesn't really make a difference there. And they have this as part of a doubleheader at Eric Tweedale, as I mentioned earlier. And then we have a 5 o'clock kickoff being broadcasted on New South Wales Rugby League TV, so you can catch this one online as well. Lots of Parramatta football to watch this week if you have that pass with New South Wales Rugby League TV. Eels look like this. Lorenzo Molitalo taking over at fullback for the second week running with Zach Sini out. I'm not sure what the timeline is on Zach Sini, but it might be, if it lasts much longer, it's probably the last we'll see of him as an Eel if the rumours about Super League are true. But you've got Hayes Dunster making his return on one wing, Isaac Lumi on the other, Ethan Martin and Morgan Harper the centres. Martin came back last week and bagged the double 60s, which was good to see. Zach Hunter, the young half, reprises his position in the team after a 2 linebacker assist, 2 try assist night against Penrith. He partners Ethan Sanders. Ogden, Matt Arthur, and Makatoa the front row. Matt Dury, Mattielli, and Brock Parker. Sorry, Tony Mattielli, Brock Parker there, the back row. Then on the interchange, Manny Luke, Will Lewis, another young guy getting his second game back-to-back here in Cup with Reece Alderton, and then Paddy Spence making his Cup debut, rounding out the team. They take on the Knights, and just a quick gander at that Newcastle team, 60s. David Armstrong. How quick does the game go past you, doesn't it, 60s, where Armstrong wasn't too long ago being hailed for doing such a great job replacing Kalen Ponga, and now he's been supplanted by young Sharp. So he's now the back and fullback in this grade here. Thomas Jenkins we saw at Penrith last year. Who else is there? Will Price obviously made his debut against Parramatta earlier this year. Then we've got former Eel Jacob Davis, a dummy half. Jermaine McKeown we saw in the Origin 19s game earlier this year. He had a good game there, big physical back rower. And then former Eel Miles Martin on the interchange. So definitely some young players there to watch from Newcastle, but likewise Eels got some young guns of their own that we're hoping can kick on and have another good game.
Well, John, we saw a performance last week from the Eels that wasn't expected. Against the Panthers, they were, almost like the first grade team. The victory was taken away late in the game, but although in this instance it was a draw, that was the final result. But, we had grave concerns for what the mindset was of the Eels after some losses that were a long way from being ideal in recent weeks. And it was almost a matter of thinking, well, you know what, they're waiting for the end of the season to happen. But being a home game, they really did turn up last week. Probably deserved a better result. It didn't happen. Once again, we've got young players being given their opportunities where, although we're getting both Hunter and Lewis are backing up for the second week there. Paddy Spence getting his opportunity there at senior level, which is, it's interesting, isn't it, that these boys, it's a chance for them, especially if they haven't got any deals for next year. And I don't know what the scenario is for all of them, but if they haven't got any deals for next year, it's a great way to showcase themselves playing at a senior level. Yep. So they're not playing age football; they're playing at a senior level. So really keen to see how they all go again this week. I guess they also, as players, they bring that energy and excitement about playing up in senior football rather than in age football. So great to have as a double header this week out at Eric Tweedale. So that's if you're really keen to get out there and see some local football with the Eels, you get 2 grades at Eric Tweedale, 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock kickoffs respectively for the Jersey Flegg and New South Wales Cup. We'll obviously be out there, John, and really looking forward to seeing plenty of other Eels supporters out there getting behind the team.
Yeah, exactly, mate. And look, Newcastle, they're always a pretty handy outfit in this grade, so I'm expecting a pretty tough contest here. But the Eels, I really got to give this team credit because, like the Flegg team in the grade below them, they were so far behind the 8 ball, could have easily have just folded and gotten rolled for the rest of the season. Instead, they dug their heels in, had a real hot crack at making the finals. It unraveled a little bit a couple of weeks ago, and that put them, outside of the reach of the finals. But even then, they didn't roll over and give up. They could have easily have been smashed by Penrith. Instead, we're leading deep into that game, save for a big comeback from Penrith to make it a draw. So I'm loving the fire. Like you said, I'm loving that these guys feel like there is something to prove, both as a team and individually, because there is something to prove. They're very much playing for whether it's a not necessarily a top 30 spot, but a second tier spot or a development spot for the club with new management, new coaches there. And we know that Jason Rolls is out there getting the lay of the land away from the NRL. So they're very much putting themselves on show here to play for their future. So everyone's responded really positively. I think that it's going to carry through to this weekend. Whether they get the win or not, I think they're going to play committed football. And that's all you ask from your team. So really keen to see how they hold themselves onto the field this week. And I think they could upset the Newcastle Knights.
Well, John, in talking about players that have got something to prove, there's been all the headlines out there about the players that the Eels have either tapped on the shoulder or rumouredly, are rumoured to have tapped on the shoulder. I mean, even to the point where there's the rumour that Gutho is going to be allowed to leave. How much of that is factual or not, we don't know. We're pretty sure that a lot of the other stuff that's come out has been truthful about the players that are free to negotiate other contracts. But they're talking about players going, and obviously players have to come in for those that they replace. But I think what's being overlooked is the fact that there are about 6 or 7 places on the roster that still have to be filled, even without players going. So there's blokes who are off contract, and there are spots that are available for rising players, and that's if the Eels decide to keep certain positions available for those who are currently at the club, rather than going to market. So we expect that the Eels might go to market for some higher profile players if they can create some salary cap space. But in this instance, there's blokes out there that are either under contract or have their contracts finished, and it's a chance for them to push their claims. And to that end, you got Hayes Dunster out there, who I think still got another year on his current deal to go. He hasn't played very much football. He hasn't played. That's in the last 3 years. This season, he hasn't played since about round 7, as we talked about the other night. So this is his return match. He'll get to show the club in these last couple of rounds, does he still have something to offer, or have injuries got the better of him? You've got Morgan Harper, who was only signed on a 1-year deal. Do they keep him? Is he worth keeping as a depth signing? Again, these are the things that Jason Ryall's going to be looking at. The same for blokes like Ogden and Tony Matteelli.
Yep.
Can Brock Parker get a contract that's better than a second tier type deal that he's playing under at the moment? There's all of these sorts of questions that are there. So, look, I think they've got the potential to win this, John. I'll suggest a 6-point margin. I don't do it with confidence because, I think there's an element about the Eels New South Wales Cup that's a week-to-week proposition, in terms of headspace. So if they approach the game with the same attitude that they did last week, they're in a good chance of getting the job done. But really needs for them to be switched on for the full 80 minutes. We've seen what can happen when they're not. So
All right, which takes us to the final 2 games on this week's slate. And it's the high-flying NRLW that we'll go to next. 60s, they're playing some wonderful football. Minutes away from a 3-0 start to the year. And their one loss is against the competition leaders. So that looks pretty good with the benefit of hindsight 3 games deep into this competition. Then they now head to Campbelltown Stadium on Sunday, 6:10 p.m. So they close out the top flight football on the weekend between NRL and NRLW to take on the West Tigers, the winless West Tigers. Quick look at the West team. 60s, Botil, Vetty Welsh at fullback, one of a number of Eels in this, or former Eels in this squad actually. They've got Pollard and another former Eel, Staines on the wing, Leanne Tufunga and Rakia Horn, another Eel there in the centres. Rakia was one of our favourites actually. She was a real goer for the Eels during her tenure there. Then you got Pauline Pilae Rasabale and Lasana Lutu in the halves. Togatuki and Pio the props to Salman Now at dummy half. Brooke Talataina and Najvada George. And then, Brooke Talataina and Cheyenne McGlone on the edges. And then George at lock. Getting around the wrong way there. Then Sophie Curtin, Natasha Panatani, sister to Tiana, and then Tara Rinke and Jessica Kennedy rounding out their team. For the Eels, no changes this week. That is probably the furthest thing from a surprise as you could get, given that they've been playing some great football. So Church at fullback, running second on the Dally M's there. She's having a great start to this year. Faye and Donovan on the wings. The union pair of centres there, Rory Owen and Rosie Kelly at 3 and 4 respectively. Toy Hiku and Pearson in the halves. Albert Jones, the front row pairing to Todd Hunter at dummy half. Action Jackson there on one edge, the right one that is, with Mahalia Murphy, the captain, on the left. Kennedy Charrington at lock forward. Rosie Marie Beckett, Tyler Amiatu, Jade Fanua, and Ruby Jean Kennard Ellis rounding out their rotation. Extended roster: Tafoa Asua, Brianna Eels, Chelsea Makira, Kate Felwyn, Pahuka Berryman, Duff. And do we have officials for this game here? I'll try and get to the NRL Match Centre maybe, because the Eels Match Centre doesn't have anyone listed. So just give me 1 second. Last game here. And we have Dave Munro in the box. That's the only official listed for this game. So no one else appointed as it stands. But the Eels 60s on the back of another successful trip to Brisbane. It's kind of crazy that they spent more time in Queensland than they have at home. And I was actually going to gripe about our draw in terms of the scheduling with our home games because the first half is brutal. But have you seen our back half of the draw? I know we play some good teams, but it is home game city.
Yeah. I think we've got, 2 games at Eric Tweedale and 2 games at Combank?
I believe you're correct, yes. And then 1 game at Canberra, I think, was the or it was a Canberra home game, I think, was the other venue.
Yeah, they still come out on the wrong side of the ledger in terms of the number of home games because there was a designated home game that was played at Sydney the other week. So, it'd be nice if when there's 9 games in the season that there be one time where the Eels can actually get 5 home games rather than, well, I guess 4 home games is better than the 2 we've been getting. It
is a marked step up, mate.
It's 100% improvement on previous seasons. And look, by my calculation there, what is that, about 6 former Eels in the Tigers lineup?
I believe it's 6. Boteil, Rakia, Tess, Lasana, Christian, Najvada, and no, Sophie Curtin didn't play for us. Emily Curtin played a little bit for us. I believe it's 6. And then anyone extend the roster there? No. But yes, it's funny, isn't it? Given that I know we made a grand final in 23, but we've also had our struggles here. But we've had a lot of girls go on to other clubs, Cronulla, West Tigers in particular. I think those 2 ventures have bought heavily from Parramatta, and they've all done pretty well. I know that the Tigers struggled last year, but Christian Pio had a pretty good year individually. So it'd be interesting to see how they match up this week.
Yeah, and you know what? The Eels all of a sudden are playing the type of football that, when I say all of a sudden, of course, I'm talking about in 2024,
yes.
are playing the type of football that will threaten every team that they play against because the forwards are just super aggressive in their approach to the game. The shifts, although they've got some improvement to happen with the backline play, it's still like a leap ahead, a quantum leap ahead from what they were producing last year. You can see the attacking shape. You can see even if the play doesn't go exactly how they plan it, you can actually see what the goal is with the shift. You can see the shapes that are there that Steve Georgalis has been working on. But, of course, the biggest difference has to be defence, mate.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, the venom, the aggression, the desperation on the goal line, they're all hallmarks of a team that is buying into what their coach is selling.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see that it's a coaching gig that Steve Georgalis is absolutely enjoying. He verbalised that last week after, sitting there smiling again through the presser and just at the end saying, I'm really enjoying coaching this group. And it was obvious that it's something that he's enjoying. One of the things would be, and I got to see a little bit of it at the training session that I went to watch in the pre-season, was what willing students the players are for the changes
they're
that he's brought about.
Devouring the spring of NRL caliber knowledge that Steve has brought to the setup, to the program. And it is, we talk about it all the time in terms of how fast the pathways for the women's game has accelerated. And you can just see that they are so hungry for new knowledge to elevate their game. And the Eels were no exception here because they've clearly reacted and responded in an overwhelmingly positive manner to the experience and knowledge that Steve has brought to the program.
Yeah, and when you look at it and you think, okay, there aren't too many changes to the roster. I mean, they've got a couple of new centres that are there. Elsie Albert's obviously playing is able to play.
Yeah, well, you got Pearson now, but both healthy.
Available.
Your two marquee recruits from the year before.
Yeah.
What a difference
Yes.
that makes.
But look, apart from that, the majority of that. Oh, and of course Chloe Jackson, who's perhaps going to be well in line for Rookie of the Year in the Eels NRLW team.
She's a feisty presence on that right edge, isn't she? She just has great footwork before the line, doesn't mind getting the ball out on second phase, and just keeps herself busy. You love to see it. I mean, a completely different player to the individual she replaced in Boss Kapua, who was a big, powerful edge runner. Chloe is all action, and it's a funny contrast, but she's fit in so well.
Yeah, and when I blogged the New South Wales Women's Rugby League match, where I think it was the Eels were playing the Rabbitohs, and I was getting towards the end of the blog, and I was just reviewing some of the running comments that I was making, where I say so often, John, that I cannot do the same job as you when it comes to blogging, because I'm there with the thumbs typing away on my phone.
It is just inherently so much more difficult on a phone compared to a laptop. I will give you that.
Yeah, but yes, I mean, let's face it. You can touch type. You can watch the game as you type. It is a unique skill that you have, mate. It's especially when it comes to social media coverage of matches. So there's a lot that I miss. There's a lot that I can't put into my match descriptions. And I looked at it and I thought, I haven't mentioned Chloe Jackson in the inverted commas call that I'd made. And that's because I'm not calling it play by play. I'm giving an idea about where the Eels are advancing the ball to, rather than necessarily calling out too many players. If there's a big moment, like a try being scored, I will reference the players that are involved in the scoring play. But I looked at that late in the game and I thought, her work rate has been outstanding. How have I not mentioned her? So I think I just put in a quick comment about her just having an incredible motor at the end of the blog, because I thought this cannot go out without giving her credit for what she brought to the team that day. So when she was elevated to the NRLW team, it wasn't really a surprise to me. I mean, obviously it was bring in a back rower for a back rower, but she's probably, I'm just so impressed with the fact that she's brought the same sort of standard, the same impact that she was having at the Harvey Norman level. She's brought it to the NRLW level, like she's been playing with that team the entire time. When I say the entire time, I mean like she's trained to be in that position through the preseason, like she was maybe part of the team last year. It looks like she fits like a glove into that team. It's seamless, absolutely seamless. So, yeah, look, the forwards doing a great job. The backs capitalising. Abby Church, incredibly underrated player. We're going to get that hashtag Take Me to Church going there this year. The centres have been a revelation, John. They absolutely have, to pick up two centres from Union.
Yeah, that's what a banger job by the recruitment panel for the NRLW. It was a difficult market in terms of like the NRLW known quantities to go out there and find backline players, and instead they turned to rugby, both international sevens and the domestic club level, and found two fantastic players. So huge boost to the squad. It completely transforms the landscape. We're not even talking about a backline featuring Lindsay Tui right now because she broke her jaw in that 19s game. So they are not full strength right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Cassie Toihiku, we keep talking about, she could be anything.
How good is that connection between her and Abby Church right now?
Yeah.
Cassie's ability to, it's not dissimilar to Dylan Brown, the ability to dig so deep into a line and still present equal dangers passing and running has opened up fantastic corridors for Church. And I think they're only just getting started, those two.
Yeah, and the energy that's brought into that pack. We talk about we expect it with Kennedy, we expect it with Mahalia. We've already spoken about Chloe and Elsie, but Madeline Jones, mate, she's a bit of an unsung hero in this first few rounds.
Yeah, she's been out there breaking some tackles. Yeah, breaking some tackles, been a bit of a threat for either line. Not overplaying her hand too. We spoke about that with the Harvard Norman women's team 60s. She isn't the quote unquote alpha prop in this pack. That's obviously Elsie Albert. She's doing a great job being the secondary, the foil prop to Albert there, and really running in her wake with good effect. And then on the interchange, Tyler Amiatu, well, we sung her praises last year, but both her and Jade Fanua are giving the Eels a lot of punch in that second rotation. So it's a really, really good pack 60s.
Interesting too, the Rose Beckett, because we know her as a halfback, and she's a quality halfback. Her role coming on last week, she looked like she'd been playing dummy half all her life.
She had a fan. That was a week after I'd sort of posed the question of should we be bringing in Chelsea Makiro to have a specialist dummy half on the bench, because against Cronulla, it wasn't like Rosemary was bad against Cronulla, but there were just moments where the service was just a fraction of a second late, and that sort of stuff adds up. But she came out against North Queensland and had great service, 2 fantastic tries. In particular, the first one was awesome. The second one was, a little bit easier with a shorter range dive over. But the first one was great vision on the last tackle, tacking the left edge short side, weaving in between retreating defenders to get over the line. That was a hell of a breakout game for Rosemary.
We're talking confidence there with that. And, when the Eels lost Ruben Cherrington for the season, they were losing a player that, like his sister, brings a lot of aggression to the pack. And that for me was a concern, because Ruben has that capacity, like his sister, to really get up in the face of opponents and bring a physicality to the game that sometimes dummy halves don't necessarily bring, because teams are after faster, nippier dummy halves, whereas she brings a power game to dummy half as well. So, I guess in that regard, she allows for the potential that you could have a Todd Hunter or a Rose Beckett on the bench, and that Ruben could even swap to a lock role, or even a back rower role, whilst the replacement dummy half is on the field. Depending, it just gives extra options for the rotation off the interchange. But anyway, mate, we better get to our tips here. Look, I think that I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here with taking on a team that's winless. We spoke about that before, the risks of that. But if the Eels execute and perform like they have been in the last few weeks, if they could get the type of win that they just had over the Cowboys, look, I think that they can get a win of 13 or more against the Tigers. Perhaps a margin as high as 20 points in this one. It's and this could be important for them when they start looking at their differential come the end of the season. So this is a game where they want to really get that differential happening.
Yeah,
I think.
I'm with you. And to steal one of your phrases, that on exposed form, I think the Eels should be winning and winning well in this game. And we know that rugby league isn't that simple. We literally saw last week of our boys rocking the Penrith Panthers, save for some controversial no calls, that on any given, in this case, Sunday, that any team can beat any team. But I think our girls are flying high. I want to see them go out there and win heavily. 13 plus was the metric that you put there. I would hope it's even more. I know you said closer to 20 points potentially. I want to see them go out there and really put everything together. Don't overplay your hands. Don't underrate your opposition, but just go out there and play good football the way they have for the first 3 games. Importantly, this week I believe Cronulla and Newcastle meet. So I know Newcastle lost against the Dragons in a big upset last week, but if they get back to their winning ways, a win this week gives the Eels an equal share of the competition lead, which is something that I don't believe they've ever had this deep into a competition. So it would be an important milestone for our girls. So go out there, get the job done. You don't need to play different football from what you've been doing. Your pack just goes out there, is hungry and aggressive the way they've been against the Broncos, the Sharks, the Cowboys, and you give your back line and your spine opportunities to play off the back of that. So I think a good healthy win is in order here, and I will back them to get it done. First try scorer, I got Rosie Kelly right last week, but I think we might be going to church this week. 60s. We'll go with Abby there, and then best on field. Let's go with Kennedy Charrington.
Okay, well, I'm going to go with an edge player to get the first try in Mahalia Murphy. I was torn between her and Cassie Toihiku, but I'll go with Mahalia there. And as for best on field this week, I'm going to go with Kennedy for best on field this week. So let's hope that they are able to finish the weekend for us on an absolute bottler of a high.
Yes.
And this now takes to the NRL clash Friday night against the Roosters.
Yeah, Eels continue their gauntlet right now. Just as well they're not in finals contention, I suppose, as they keep coming against top 3, top 4 teams. They're taking on the Roosters now for 8 o'clock p.m. Friday night out at Allianz Stadium, not to be confused with the old Allianz Stadium, which is now a core stadium, which was also ANZ and Telstra Stadium at one point. Gotta love Australia and its stadium naming rights. But they're taking on the Roosters, who come into this game sitting third on the ladder, which is kind of hard to believe because the Roosters have struggled against top 8 teams, but have just gotten the job done against everyone else, I suppose. Roosters, for their part, look like this. Tedesco at fullback, Tupou and Young on the wings, Swali'i and Manu rounding out what is a very, very good back line. Keary and Walker are their halves. Lenu, Collins, the 2 bookends to Brandon Smith at dummy half. Crichton in a career year on one edge. Radley on the other. Connor Watson at lock forward. I'm kind of happy that he's starting at lock and not playing dummy half this game, to be honest. Then we got Tupanua, White, Butcher, and May on the bench. Extended roster, Smith, Wong, King, Feketi, and Toya. And then for the Eels, we've got, one change this week, but probably one less change than we were expecting based on reports that Madison had broken his ribs, and there's been nothing to follow that up from the club, nor even the media. We haven't seen an injury report. We haven't seen any updated presses from the DT or the SMH, so we will assume that Matto's playing, which means Guffo at fullback, captain of the team, Tungo and Russell on the wings, Penasini and Talangi in the centres, Brown and RC 6 and 7 respectively. Front row is RCG and Rumu Greg as 8 and 10, Brendan Hand starting at dummy half. Lane and Cartwright are the edge back rowers, Ryan Madison provisionally the lock forward. We have to wait and see whether he's going to drop out or not. And then on the interchange, Lussick and Ofangahi, the 14 and 15. Kelma Tuolangi making his long-awaited return from a broken hand in the 16. Dan Keir, the 17. Extended roster, Sanders, Sivo, Dury, Harper, Makatoa. I know Mike is there, so people were immediately saying, well, is he going to be an inclusion? We saw the same thing with Kelma last week where he was part of the roster but not really in the mix. And he is expected back next week per the club's timetable. So I would expect this is more of a situation of just an easy name to throw into your team list Tuesday 22 rather than stretching the paper resources pretty thin, because the real resources have also been stretched pretty thin.
Yeah, so we look at this and that's a pretty strong Roosters lineup.
Yes, it is a very, very good Roosters lineup on paper. They've, like I said, they've had their struggles against the top 8 teams. And even when they met the Eels earlier this year, I feel like it was a closer game than perhaps we expected. Let me just go pull this one up. If I can press the right buttons, which I can't because I'm an idiot.
But
there we go.
But the fact is that that sort of lineup, they should be winning games, that Roosters lineup. I mean, there's been a lot made about the players that they're going to part ways with at the end of this season. But you look at that and you go, yeah, it's pretty hard to see too many weak points.
Oh, I agree, which is
that team at all.
Their bizarre struggles against especially Penrith and Melbourne. I think, what are they, 1 and 21 or something like that now? against them combined in the last couple of years, which is just insane. But yeah, they've recent weeks they managed to edge over the Dolphins in a high scoring one. They did beat Manly, who are a top 8 team, but that was also another high scoring one. Got thumped by the Storm, and then accounted for the Dragons and the Tigers and the Bulldogs before that. So look, they've got some good wins, because the game before that was their 28-18 win over us, and that was only a late try to Daniel Tupou and Angus Crichton that really separated the two teams on that occasion. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like you said, on paper, great team, hard to find a weakness, but it doesn't really translate to the kind of consistent form that they're probably hoping they would have.
No, but let's talk about if we were in another world right now, a world where the Eels had not had their struggles this year, where we were able to field a full-strength team. There hadn't been the coaching dramas. They were in finals contention at this time of the year. We were already looking at the start of the year at about how challenging the draw at the end of the season was anyway. Consecutive weeks of, the Panthers and then the Roosters, it was going to be a tough ask without the circumstances that the Eels are in anyway. And I'm having to update the injury costs for this year with Madison out in first grade by the looks of it. Look, I'll be stunned if I can't believe that there would be reports coming out that he's busted his ribs if he hasn't busted his ribs.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Those sort of reports don't come out when there's no reason to have a fake broken rib, essentially.
No. If he's busted his ribs, he's not playing again this season. Let alone this week. He's not playing again this season.
Puts another layer of respect on the fact that he got 3 points from me and you in that game, that he played the rest of that game with alleged broken ribs as well. So,
and when we're talking about top 30 injuries, we've now got Zach Sini, who was an omission last week, and now he's still injured this week. So I'm having to update where last week I said we could forecast 131 games of players being absent this season, and that was without new injuries occurring, and that was with people returning on timelines as they were expected to, or people being out for the season as expected to. We're at 131. We're going to end up being closer to 140 than 131. We are going to be sitting at a situation where
we're breaking the wrong kind of records.
We're close to if you think about 131 games of injury, that's heading towards 6 players missing an entire season. That number, by the time it's finished, it will actually be 6 players missing an entire season. You're talking about a top 30 roster that had 27 in the roster. If you take out another 6 players that are missing for the season, you're talking about on average 21 top 30 players being available for selection every single week on average. So you know that there's probably been weeks where it's been worse. Maybe the odd week early in the season when it was better, but that's how it worked out. There is no hiding that. I mean, we've got players playing first grade that aren't in the top 30 and aren't on development deals. That's just the facts. So it's been a horror season. We thought last year was pretty bad and it could only get better. No.
No. A cautionary tale. This is like the Brothers Grimm fairy tales right here. Surely things can't get any worse than Raiders. Yes, they could indeed get worse.
Yeah, and what has happened, what's transpired, of course, this season is, and we were seeing the start of it last year, was that football has changed. The role of forwards has moved towards greater speed, greater mobility. The start of the season, we were talking about how the Eels pack was at strength like it had been in previous seasons. No, it wasn't the strength. In fact, it was, if anything, an ageing pack became a challenge. An ageing and less mobile pack became a challenge for the Eels to have. We're expecting that there will be change to the roster for next year. It's the type of football that will be played will be changed. Now, it's not to say that the Eels aren't fighting bravely with the players that are available. I mean, they should have just beaten the reigning premiers, a team going for their fourth premiership in a row. The Eels were the better team last week. The final result doesn't say that. The Panthers got the better of them in an 8-minute period where they had a whole bunch of calls going their way and where the Eels made a major stuff up with where they could control how the rest of the game would go. They weren't able to do it. And I guess that says that the Panthers were the better team because they were able to do it. But for the majority of the game, the Eels had control of it, were getting the better of the Panthers. That's all down to effort, big effort. It was a big effort the week before when they got the victory over the Warriors. It was a big effort the week before that when they were unlucky to lose. It's, we can't question that the players are busting a gut and that the players care. So can they get the job done this week? Man, let's just look at that Roosters lineup. And I know we could have said the same last week about the Panthers, but we actually pointed out that the Panthers would be worse off without Dylan Edwards for a start than they would be worse off without James Fisher-Harris. The Eels were certainly more injury savage. I mean, you can't believe commentary talking about the injury-depleted Panthers against the Eels. Please. But this is an injury-depleted Eels team against what looks like a full-strength Roosters team. Or
close enough not to matter.
Yeah. Like, let's be serious here. It's a massive ask. In all honesty, if the Eels compete, and I think they'll have a red-hot crack again, but I think it's just a bridge too far, this one. Like, I really do. It's I'll tip the Eels to be competitive, but I'm going to have to tip the Roosters to get the job done by about 12 points.
Yeah.
In terms of a margin, I think it's going to be a score of, maybe something like about, 30 to 18 or 34 to 22, something like that. It's going to be the Roosters will get points. There's points right across that side there. The Eels will have to have identified things in the video sessions about where their opportunities are. They're going to have to execute far better than they have been at key times. They can't afford to lose moments in the game. The Eels' left side has to defend so much better than they did last week. So much better. It's like they can't be conceding over 30 points again and think that they're going to get the win against a Roosters team that has ambitions to do some damage this season. So, John, as I said, I think at least a 12-point margin to the Roosters, and I hate saying that. For the Eels, I think their first try scorer will be Dylan Brown or Clint Gutherson. Maybe
surely you go Jake Tungor, the first try scoring specialist.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be Brown or Gutho, forced to pick. No, I'll go back to my original thought. I'll say Dillbags, and the Eels' best performer. Look, I'm just going to go again on the safe route there. I think it's again between Gutho and Brown. I think Brown might just have a really strong performance in this one. He was maybe a little bit on the quiet side in moments against the Panthers, but yeah, they're the real big effort play individuals in the Eels team. So
unfortunately for Dillbags, I think he's going to get a few opportunities to make some incredible cover tackles from the other side of the field in this one. So he might feature because of that. The Parramatta's left edge, I think, is probably going to be tested pretty aggressively, and they struggled in the big moments against Penrith last week. So I think that, like you, if the Eels are legitimately competitive against the Roosters, that would speak volumes to how committed they are to finishing this season in a positive manner as possible, because they've been playing good, tough football for about a month now, at a time of the season where we probably would have expected, not that you would want them to, but you probably would expect them to fold given all the drama that's happened in the periphery this year. Instead, they've dug deep. I don't know how much is left in the reserve tank at this point, because they're short on players. They are just short on luck, as we saw against Penrith, and that stuff always hurts. So if they are within a try in the final 20 minutes, I think they would have done very well. I think that it's probably going to end up being maybe even more than what you forecasted, a 12-point loss. The Roosters do love to pile on the points against us when we are struggling, even though we did acquit ourselves much better than I expected earlier this year. I will go for a... You know what? I'm going to ride the Jake Tungle first try scorer train into the ground. He's made a bit of a fist of it in recent games, so we'll go to him again. Best on field, I mean, you mentioned Gufferson and Dillbags, and they are both very good shouts. I will go someone else in the sake of conjuring a miracle. Maybe Will Penasini has a good game, a very good game up against, I believe he'll be up against Swali. Is that right? It's Manu played, Joseph played right centre for Origin, so he might be up against Joey Manu. That'll be a good battle then, if Will does have a good game. And then the other one I want to show...
Will. Hit and stick.
Yes, the hit and stick. Yes, you're right. And the other player that I'm interested in seeing insofar as a potential continuance of what was very good form prior to their injury and suspension too, could have been a pick-up poison case there, is Kelma Tuolangi. Been out for close to 2 months now, but he was in some good form prior to that combo injury suspension against Manly. Can he recapture that prior to the season wrapping up? I would hope so, and I'm keen to see what he can do in this game as a result.
Well, let's just say that as far as the Roosters are concerned, I think I can see where you're going with Tungle being first try scorer, because I think there are opportunities out wide to score against the Roosters. Although, mind you, the Roosters in return are very good, especially when that ball goes in the air to those two wingers. But I think there are scoring opportunities conversely against them. Surely the Eels target the Roosters halves, and especially Walker, with big fellas running at them. There's opportunities to score there. But it comes down to, we can't afford those errors where we're turning over the ball in attack. We've just got to have better game management at key times, and that left edge, it's just got to work more efficiently together in defence. We just can't. We can't present opportunities with, there are just too many missed tackles out on that side, and it doesn't happen all game, but when it happens, it seems to be
very costly in explosive bursts.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah. Okay, mate. Well, I think that just about wraps things up.
It does.
And as we're at this point, thank you to everyone for listening. No matter what platform you're listening to this on, if you can give it a like and subscribe, especially those people that are tuning in via YouTube, all of that stuff helps the algorithm, and it starts to presented as something for people who were interested in rugby league to tune into, because believe it or not, there are people out there who aren't aware of the Cumberland Throw. Crazy as that may seem.
For all the international awards that we picked up this year as well, that is crazy.
Oh, mate, we had to put it out there to some of the countries. Look, take it easy. There's, we're running out of space on the mantelpiece for all those awards. So, and we can't afford for us to lose track of our humility at the same time. So
our delusions of grandeur could definitely inhibit our ability to operate this podcast, guys. But yeah,
that's it.
Look, you say that in jest, but considering how rough things have been for the Eels on the field, it has been a wonderful journey for us this year, hasn't it? With the former players and greats we have a chance to preview games with and talk about football in general on the pre-game show, and to all the wonderful listeners who chime in and make this podcast and our website such a great community. Thank you for persevering through a tough year, guys. It means a lot.
Yeah, what has been one of the things that's surprised me this year, given the year that we've had, has been what was going to be an interesting spot for us in Para Leagues, where our podcast our live appearance now takes place in the bistro. So we had people who were our regulars that would come up and watch the podcast up in Jack's Bar and Grill. We also were probably more regular in doing post-game appearances in the club. We had the switch to the bistro. We've switched appearances to being pre-game because that allowed us to have access to the legends on a more regular basis. It was also not much fun turning up for podcast appearantions after losses.
It's probably just as well we didn't appear after the Penrith game because he might have been cancelled.
I think we might have been in trouble for from throwing out some obscenities in our podcast as well. But to have the people that have become regulars to our pre-game podcast, the people who come up and introduce themselves to us or come up and want to ask questions, certainly the large number of people that grab some words with our legend players, photos, get something signed. It's always great to see that interaction between players from the Eels past and current fans. Genuine thank you to our listeners, the people who come in to see us in person. Thank you, of course, to Para Leagues as well for allowing us to continue our appearances in the club. It's something that we enjoy doing, and I'd like to think it's something that the people who get to those podcasts appreciate as well. Thank you to Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. As we always say, Greg and the team, they've been with us for the long haul, and they help us to get the podcast and all of our content out to you on a regular basis. We're in the home stretch, people. It hasn't been a great season, but thank you for sticking with us. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.